In 1347, your chance of dying was 60%. And I'm not talking about your chances today after eating fast food for 30 years. I'm talking about your chances as a healthy 25-year-old. Yeah. You were screwed. Welcome to 1347, the year Europe decided to speedrun human extinction. In this video, you'll discover why your medieval doctor was basically a serial killer with a license, the job that paid triple wages. Because everyone doing it kept dying. And the one thing that could save you, spoiler, it's running away like a coward. But before we talk about survival, let's discuss something important. Where would you even poop? Let's set the scene. You wake up in a small village outside Florence, Italy. The year is 1347, and life already sucks before the plague shows up. Your house? A wooden box you share with your parents, grandparents, 3 siblings, and probably a goat named Gerald. Privacy? Never heard of it. You sleep on a pile of straw that hasn't been changed in. Actually, it's never been changed. That's not straw anymore. That's a biological weapon. But hey, at least you have a roof. It leaks. But it exists. Let's talk about your morning routine. Bathroom. You walk outside to a hole in the ground. That's it. That's the toilet. No toilet paper. You use leaves, your hand, or just ... hope for the best. Breakfast. Stale bread. Maybe some onions if you're lucky. Meat? That's for rich people and Christmas. You eat meat like twice a year, and it's probably been dead for a week. Water. You drink from the river. The same river where people dump their waste. The same river where animals die. The same river that's downstream from 3 other villages doing the exact same thing. Honestly, it's impressive anyone lived past 30. October 1347. 12 ships arrive at the port of Messina, Sicily. The crew is mostly dead. The ones still alive? They're not doing great. They're covered in black boils, coughing blood, and generally ruining everyone's day. The port authorities take one look and think, maybe we should quarantine these ships. Just kidding. They let everyone off immediately. Great job, guys. Really nailed that one. Greater than within days, people start getting sick. Greater than. First symptom, fever. Greater than you're burning up, sweating through your clothes. But medieval clothes are made of wool and you haven't washed them in 6 months, so honestly this isn't that unusual. Greater than. Second symptom, the chills. Greater than now you're freezing. You're shaking so hard you can't hold a cup. Greater than. People think you're possessed. Great. Greater than third symptom. The buboes. Greater than oh boy. Here we go. Greater than. Swellings the size of apples start appearing on your neck, armpits, and groin. Greater than they're black. They're leaking pus. And they hurt so much that people are literally screaming day and night. Greater than. This is where it gets its name. The Black Death. Greater than not a great marketing name, honestly. Should have gone with something less terrifying. Greater than. The mild inconvenience would have caused less panic. Greater than. Now here's the thing that makes this extra fun. Greater than nobody knows how the plague spreads. Greater than. Medieval doctors have theories, though. Greater than. And by theories, I mean wild guesses that are 100% wrong. Greater than theory 1, bad air. They think diseases are caused by bad smells. Greater than solution. Carry flowers and herbs. Greater than. Effectiveness, 0. Greater than. But hey, at least you smell nice while dying. Greater than theory 2. Divine punishment. Greater than. God is angry at humanity for ... something. Greater than solution? Pray harder. Whip yourself in the streets. Kill some Jews. Greater than yes, really. Medieval Europe was a WFUL about this. Greater than. Effectiveness. Also 0. plus you've now committed hate crimes, greater than. Theory 3. Astrological alignment, greater than. The planets are in a bad position. Solution. Wait for the planets to move, greater than Allah's. Effectiveness, still 0, greater than the actual cause, greater than fleas, on rats, greater than. The bacteria Yersinia pestis lives in fleas, greater than fleas bite rats, rats die. Fleas jump to humans, greater than fleas bite humans, humans die. Greater than simple, right? But medieval people don't have microscopes, greater than. They can't see bacteria, greater than. So they're just dying en masse with no idea why, greater than. It's like playing a video game where you keep dying, but there's no death screen telling you what killed you. You just respawn in hell, greater than. Okay, so your neighbor just collapsed in the street, greater than. He's got the buboes. He's coughing blood. He's begging for help, greater than. What do? Greater than. Option A. Help him, greater than. You're a good person. You bring him inside, give him water, comfort him, greater than. Result. You're dead in 3 days, greater than. Turns out, close contact with plague victims is a bad idea. Who knew? Greater than. Option B. Run to the countryside, greater than. Fade. You've heard the plague is spreading. Time to get out of Dodge. Result. You're probably dead in a week, greater than. Why? Because infected fleas are in your clothes, greater than. You just brought the plague with you, greater than. Congratulations, you're now patient 0 in a whole new village, greater than. Fende. Option C. Lock yourself inside your house and wait it out, greater than. No contact with anyone. Ultimate quarantine, greater than. Result. You're dead in 5 days, greater than. The rats and fleas are already inside your house, greater than. They live in your walls. They sleep in your straw bed. You're locked in a death trap of your own making, greater than. So what's the right answer? Greater than. Leave immediately, before anyone in your town gets sick, greater than. Go alone. Don't bring anyone, greater than. Go far, not the next village over. Think 100 plus miles, greater than. Stay isolated for 2-3 years. Oh, and you need, greater than. Enough food for 2 to 3 years, greater than. A safe place to stay, greater than. Money to buy land, greater than. Skills to grow your own food, greater than. Weapons to defend yourself from bandits, greater than. Extreme luck, greater than. So basically, unless you're rich and psychic, you're screwed, greater than. By 1348, things are getting spicy, greater than. And by spicy, I mean societal collapse, greater than. In Florence, 100,000 people die in 4 months, greater than. That's about 833 people per day. Greater than. The city runs out of space to bury bodies. Solution? Mass graves, greater than. They dig pits 50 feet deep and just ... Start throwing bodies in, greater than. Layer of bodies. Layer of dirt. Layer of bodies. Layer of dirt, greater than. It's like making a cursed lasagna, greater than. In some cities they just give up entirely, greater than. Bodies are left in the streets to rot, greater than. Dogs eat them, rats feast on them, greater than. It smells exactly as bad as you're imagining, greater than. Villages are completely wiped out, greater than. Not most people died, I mean everyone died, greater than. 0 survivors. In England alone, over 1,000 villages completely disappear, greater than. They're abandoned. Nature reclaims them, greater than. Some are never found again, greater than. Entire family lines end, greater than. Your surname? Gone, greater than. Your family farm that's been in your family for 200 years? Nobody left to inherit it. Greater than. Now, if you've survived this long, congratulations. Greater than you're in the lucky 50%. Greater than, but you still need to eat. Greater than, which means you need to work. Let's rank the deadliest jobs of 1,347. Greater than number 5. Farmer greater than mortality rate. 50% greater than you work alone in fields. Pretty safe. Greater than. Except rats live in your grain storage. Greater than. And you sleep in a barn. Greater than with rats. Greater than lots of rats. Greater than. Number 4. Merchant greater than mortality rate. 65% greater than you travel between cities for trade. Greater than. Which means you're going to the plague multiple times voluntarily. Greater than. Bold strategy. Greater than. Number 3. Priest greater than mortality rate. 85% greater than your job is to give last rites to dying people. You lean in close. You touch them. You breathe the same air. Greater than. And you do this 20 times a day. Greater than. The Catholic Church loses 40% of its clergy. Greater than. They have to fast-track ordinations. Greater than. Can you read? No? Whatever, you're a priest now. Good luck. Greater than number 2. Gravedigger greater than mortality rate. 90% greater than the pay is triple normal wages. Greater than. Because everyone who takes this job dies within weeks. Greater than. You handle corpses all day. Greater than. Corpses covered in plague-infected fleas. You're basically rolling around in a biological weapon. Greater than. On the plus side, job security. Greater than there's always more bodies. Greater than. And the number 1 deadliest job, greater than plague doctor, greater than mortality rate. 95% greater than. These guys are legends. Greater than they wear a bird mask filled with herbs and flowers. Greater than. They think the long beak keeps bad air away from their nose. Greater than it does not work. Greater than. They also wear a long leather coat, gloves, and carry a wooden stick to poke patients from a distance. They look like a medieval Grim Reaper cosplayer. Greater than. Their medical treatments? Greater than. Bloodletting, making patients weaker. Greater than leeches, see above. Greater than. Cutting open the buboes and rubbing in a paste made of crushed emeralds. Greater than. This absolutely does not work, but it's expensive, so rich people feel better about it. Greater than. Plague doctors have a 95% mortality rate. Greater than. But hey, they look cool while dying. Greater than reason 1. Genetics greater than. Some people have a mutation called Delta 32. Milan literally welded doors shut on houses with infected people inside. Greater than the whole family. Infected or not. Greater than. Brutal? Yes. Greater than effective? Also yes. Greater than. Medieval Poland had one of the lowest death rates in Europe. Greater than. Why? They closed borders fast and enforced strict quarantines. Greater than. They also had fewer rats because their buildings were made differently. Greater than. So Poland basically won the plague by accident. Greater than. Reason 3. Pure, dumb luck. Greater than. The plague spreads through flea bites. It makes them resistant to the plague. Greater than. Not immune, resistant. Greater than. They can still die, but their odds are better. Greater than. Fun fact. This same mutation makes people resistant to HIV today. Greater than. So thanks, Black Death, for that unexpected benefit 700 years later. Greater than. Reason 2. Isolation greater than. Remember those cowards who ran away? Greater than. They were actually geniuses. Greater than. Villages that immediately closed their borders and quarantined outsiders had way fewer deaths. If the fleas on the rats near you happen to die before biting you, greater than you live. Greater than. If you happen to be traveling when your village got infected, greater than you live. Greater than. If you're naturally allergic to flea bites and scratch them until they bleed, killing the bacteria, greater than. You live. This actually happened. Greater than. Medieval survival is basically a game of chance. Greater than. You're rolling dice with death. Greater than okay, so half of Europe is dead. Greater than the survivors? They're not okay. Greater than. People's minds are breaking, and they cope in interesting ways. Greater than. Exhibit A. The flagellants greater than these guys march from town to town, whipping themselves until they bleed. Greater than. They believe God is punishing humanity for sins, and if they punish themselves, God will stop the plague. Greater than. Does it work? Of course not. Greater than do they keep doing it? Absolutely. Greater than. They travel in groups of hundreds, spreading the plague even faster. Greater than the Pope eventually bans them. Greater than. Not for being insane, for not having church authorization to be insane. Exhibit B. Plague parties greater than some people think, well, we're all going to die anyway. Might as well have fun. Greater than they throw massive parties. Greater than drinking, dancing, gambling, all the sins. Greater than. If you're going to hell for the plague, might as well earn it. Greater than. Giovanni Boccaccio writes about this in the Decameron. Greater than. His characters literally flee the plague by going to a villa and telling each other stories for 10 days. Greater than. It's like medieval Netflix and chill, except everyone outside is dying. Exhibit C. Scapegoating greater than, and now we get to the dark stuff. Greater than. People need someone to blame. Greater than. They can't blame fleas. They don't know about fleas. Greater than. They can't blame bacteria. They don't know about bacteria. Greater than. So, who do they blame? Greater than. Jewish communities. Greater than conspiracy theories spread that Jews are poisoning wells. Greater than. This is, of course, completely false. Greater than. Jews are dying from plague at the same rate as everyone else. Greater than. But facts don't matter when people are terrified. Entire Jewish communities are massacred. Greater than. Thousands are murdered. Greater than. It's one of the darkest aspects of the plague years. Greater than. And it shows how quickly society can turn on minorities during a crisis. Greater than. The plague had some bizarre long-term effects. Greater than. Effect 1. The end of feudalism. Greater than. So many people died that suddenly workers were valuable. Greater than. Before the plague, work for me or starve. Greater than. After the plague, please work for me, I'll pay you anything. Greater than. Peasants could demand higher wages. They could move to different estates. Greater than. They could negotiate. Greater than. Lords hated this. Greater than. England passed laws trying to cap wages. Greater than. It didn't work. Greater than. The peasants had leverage for the first time in history. Greater than. Medieval workers accidentally discovered collective bargaining through mass death. Greater than. Not the strategy I'd recommend, but hey, it worked. Greater than. Effect 2. Medical advances greater than doctors realized. Maybe we should actually study diseases instead of just guessing. Greater than. Revolutionary concept. They started doing autopsies. Greater than. They started keeping records. Greater than. They started comparing notes between cities. Greater than. It would take another 300 years before they discovered bacteria, but this was the start of actual medical science. Greater than. The plague killed millions but gave birth to modern medicine. Greater than. A real task failed successfully moment. Greater than. Effect 3. The Renaissance greater than after losing half the population, survivors started questioning everything. If prayer didn't stop the plague, maybe the church doesn't have all the answers? Greater than if God punished everyone equally, maybe social hierarchy is made up? Greater than if life is short, maybe we should focus on human achievement and art? Greater than this questioning led directly to the Renaissance. Greater than? Art, science, philosophy all exploded in the 1400s. Greater than the Black Death literally killed its way into the modern era. Greater than. Historians call it creative destruction. Greater than I call it the worst team-building exercise in history. Greater than all right moment of truth. Could you survive in 1347? Greater than. Let's calculate your odds. Greater than if you live in a city. Greater than base survival rate. 30% greater than if you're poor, which you probably are. Greater than. Survival rate drops to 20% greater than if you have a NY contact with sick people. Greater than survival rate. 10% greater than. If you help the sick because you're a good person. Greater than survival rate. 5% greater than now. Let's add good decisions. Greater than. If you leave immediately when you hear rumors. Greater than plus 20% survival greater than if you go to a remote, isolated area. Greater than plus 15% survival greater than if you have supplies and money. Greater than plus 10% survival greater than if you avoid all human contact for 2 years. Greater than 15% survival greater than if you have the Delta 32 mutation 10% of Europeans. Greater than 20% survival greater than best case scenario. Greater than you're rich, you leave immediately, you isolate completely, and you're genetically lucky. Greater than. Your survival odds. 70% greater than realistic scenario. Greater than you're a normal person who doesn't abandon their family. Greater than. Your survival odds. 25% greater than most likely scenario. Greater than you try to help people and do the right thing. Your survival odds. 5% greater than the plague rewards cowardice and punishes compassion. Greater than fun times. Greater than. Here's the part that should really scare you. Greater than the Black Death never actually left. Greater than. It came back in waves. Greater than London, 1665. The Great Plague greater than Marseille, 1720 greater than China. 1855 killed 12 million people greater than Madagascar. 2017, yes. 2017 greater than the bacteria Yersinia pestis still exists. Greater than. There are 1,000 to 2,000 cases every year worldwide. The only reason we're not all dead is antibiotics. Greater than. Without modern medicine, we'd be right back in 1347. Greater than so next time someone says vaccines are dangerous. Or, I don't trust doctors. Greater than remember. Medieval people didn't have a choice. Greater than we do. Greater than. Don't be medieval about modern medicine. So, could you survive the Black Death? Probably not. But hey, at least you'd have an interesting last few weeks. How did you die? Oh, you know, medieval plague. Classic. But let's say you did survive. Congratulations. You made it through the deadliest pandemic in human history. Now you just have to survive. The 100 Years' War 13371453. The Little Ice Age 1300 to 1850. The Spanish Inquisition 1478 to 1834. And whatever the hell the 1500s had going on, could you survive the next century? Find out in the next video. Could you survive in 1450? Spoiler. Also no. But it's funny watching you try. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment. Which historical period should we suffer through next? And remember, life could always be worse. You could be in 1347. See you in the next video. assuming the algorithm doesn't kill us first.